Abigail sat quietly in the back seat of her parents' old silver car, her headphones humming softly while the Alabama sun beat against the glass. Her parents, Mark and Linda, were arguing again, words spilling like static she had long learned to ignore. They had just dropped off her older sister, Vivian, at college, and the ride home felt endless. The tension was familiar, heavy, like a shadow that never left. When her father suddenly slowed the car beside a deserted train station, Abigail barely looked up. She thought it was another stop, another errand, another moment of control disguised as normal. "Go get me a soda," Mark said without turning his head. Linda added, "And a bottle of water for me, dear," her smile as hollow as ever. Abigail sighed, pulling off her headphones. The air outside hit her like fire, thick, dry, and merciless. She walked toward the faded vending machines near the cracked station wall, fed in a $5 bill, and waited as the machine groaned to life. When she turned around, holding the bottles, the parking space was empty. For a moment she thought she was dreaming. Then her phone buzzed. A text from her mother appeared. "Let's see how long it takes you to get home. Consider this a lesson." Abigail froze, reading the words again and again. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a prank. They had left her on purpose. Her heart pounded so loud she could barely hear the distant train whistle. She tried calling them over and over, but the line went straight to voicemail. The world felt still, unreal. Then something strange happened. The fear in her chest hardened into calm. They had done this before, locking her outside during storms, making her walk miles in the rain. This was just another twisted lesson. But this time she wasn't playing their game. She looked around the nearly empty station, her throat dry. A few strangers waited quietly under the shade, unaware of the 16-year-old girl abandoned with nothing but a wallet and a trembling heart. Abigail pulled out her small savings, $1.40 from her summer job, and took a deep breath. "Where's the nearest bus station?" she asked the old man behind the counter. He pointed down the road. 2 miles that way." She nodded and started walking, her shoes crunching against the gravel. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from her mother. "Don't you dare call your aunt. Figure it out yourself." Abigail stopped in the middle of the road, staring at her screen. Her fingers shook as she blocked the number. Then she did exactly what they told her not to do. She called Aunt Marigold. The line rang twice before a worried voice answered. "Abigail. Where are you, sweetheart?" Abigail swallowed hard, fighting to keep her voice steady. "They left me, Aunt Marigold. They just drove away." There was silence on the other end, then a sharp intake of breath. "Stay right there," her aunt said firmly. "I'm coming to get you." And for the first time that day, Abigail felt something she hadn't felt in years: hope. 20 years later, Abigail stood in her glass-walled office high above downtown Austin. The city shimmered below, alive, confident, unstoppable, just like the woman she had become. She had built Haven Developments from nothing, brick by brick, after clawing her way through college and every odd job she could find. Her phone buzzed on the desk, flashing a name she hadn't seen in 2 decades, Vivian. The screen showed 39 missed calls. Her hand trembled slightly as she pressed play on the first voicemail. "Abby, please pick up. Mom and Dad found you. They need your help." Abigail froze, then exhaled slowly. Help was the last thing she owed them. She listened to the next message. Just quiet sobbing. By the third, her sister's voice cracked with desperation. "Please, Abigail. You don't understand. They're desperate." Abigail's jaw tightened. The old nickname Abby scraped like sandpaper against her nerves. She deleted all 3 messages and set the phone down. Her reflection stared back at her from the window, strong, calm, in control, but inside she felt the storm rising again. After all these years they had found her. Not out of love. Not out of regret. They wanted something. She could feel it. Abigail sat down, rubbing her temples. She had expected this day to come eventually. Her parents never knew when to stop taking. But she hadn't thought it would be now, when she finally had peace. She scrolled through her voicemail list until she saw a name that made her chest tighten. Mark Holloway. Her father. Against her better judgment, she pressed play. "You think you're better than us," his slurred voice growled. "Everything you have is because of us. You owe us." Abigail's lips parted in disbelief. After all this time he was still the same. Bitter, drunk, and cruel. Her phone buzzed again, a text this time. "Your father is very disappointed in you, Abigail. We need to talk." She laughed bitterly. Disappointed. The people who had left her at a train station had the nerve to be disappointed. The anger burned deep, old and sharp. She stood, staring out over the skyline, whispering to herself, "You can't break me anymore." Then she sat back down, opened a new message to Vivian and typed, "Tomorrow. Denny's on F Street. 7 a.m. Come alone or don't come at all." She hit send and closed her phone. Tomorrow she would face the ghosts. Abigail was already sitting in the booth when Vivian walked into Denny's. The years had softened her sister's features but not her nerves. She looked anxious, older, worn. Their eyes met for a brief moment before Vivian walked over, forcing a shaky smile. "Hey, Abby," she said quietly. Abigail took a slow sip of her coffee. "It's Abigail now." Vivian's smile faded. "Right. Sorry." She sat across from her, fidgeting with the menu. "You look good," she said, trying to sound casual. Abigail's eyes were cold. "You look nervous." Vivian gave a dry laugh. "Yeah. This is complicated." Abigail leaned forward. "No, it's not. You want something. Just say it." Vivian sighed, setting the menu aside. "Mom and Dad, they're struggling." There it was, the real reason for this reunion. Abigail didn't flinch. She'd expected it. Vivian continued, her voice trembling. "Dad lost money gambling. Mom has debts. They're drowning, Abigail. The house is in foreclosure." Abigail clenched her jaw, the coffee in her hand suddenly bitter. "And they sent you to get help," she said flatly. Vivian shook her head. "They didn't send me. I came because you're the only one who can." Abigail let out a quiet laugh. "You mean the only one who escaped?" Vivian looked down at her hands, twisting the napkin until it tore. "They've changed," she whispered. "They're sorry." Abigail leaned back in her seat. "Sorry doesn't erase what they did." Her voice was calm but cutting. "Do you remember when they left me at that train station? That wasn't an accident, Viv. It was punishment." Vivian's eyes glistened. "They came back an hour later." Abigail cut her off sharply. "And whose fault was that? They expected me to crawl back, begging for forgiveness." Silence filled the booth, thick and heavy, as old wounds reopened between them. Vivian's lips trembled. "They thought you'd come home," she murmured. Abigail stared at her. "They thought wrong." The tension was unbearable, years of resentment crowding the air. Finally, Abigail dropped a few bills on the table and stood. "I'm not their daughter anymore, Vivian. I stopped being that the day they drove away." Vivian's eyes followed her, wide and wet. "Abigail, please." But she was already walking toward the door, her heels clicking against the tile like punctuation marks to the past. Outside, the morning sun was blinding, but for the first time, Abigail didn't look back. The next morning, Abigail buried herself in work. She told herself that meeting was over, that chapter closed. But unease lingered, a faint bitterness she couldn't shake. By afternoon, her assistant Jenny knocked on the door, looking uneasy. "You might want to see this," she said, holding out her phone. Abigail frowned and took it. On the screen was a Facebook post, her parents. "Our daughter abandoned us in our old age after everything we sacrificed for her." Below it, another one. "We raised her to be strong, but money changed her." Heartless. Abigail's breath caught. There were hundreds of comments, people calling her ungrateful, cruel, even evil. Jenny shifted awkwardly. "I didn't want to show you, but it's spreading. Some clients have seen it." Abigail scrolled through the comments, her stomach churning. Ungrateful child. How could she do this to her parents? Disgusting. She dropped the phone onto her desk, her pulse pounding. They're painting themselves as victims, she muttered. Jenny nodded nervously. What do you want me to do? Abigail inhaled deeply, her jaw tight. Nothing. I'll handle it. The moment Jenny left, Abigail called Vivian. Did you know about this? She demanded. The silence on the other end said enough. I told them not to, Vivian whispered. They're desperate, Abby. Abigail let out a humorless laugh. Desperate people don't destroy their children, Viv. They just want help, Vivian tried again. They think this is the only way to reach you. Abigail's voice turned icy. By lying. By turning strangers against me. Vivian didn't answer. Abigail shook her head. I should have known better. She hung up before her sister could say another word. Seconds later, a text came through, from her mother. Take those posts down, you ungrateful child. Abigail stared at the message, her anger solidifying into resolve. Not this time. Abigail opened her social media app and began typing. Some people rewrite history to escape accountability. I won't let them. She hit post. The floodgates opened instantly. Comments, shares, debates. Her story was out there now, her version, her truth. That evening, she sat in her office, the city lights flickering outside, knowing there would be consequences. But she didn't care. For years, she had stayed quiet. Silence had nearly destroyed her. Now she was done being silent. Her phone buzzed again, her father's number this time. She ignored it. Minutes later, another message appeared. You'll regret this. The next day, chaos arrived in person. Jenny's voice came through the intercom, nervous and thin. Abigail, there's an older couple here. They say they're your parents. Abigail froze. Tell them I'm in a meeting. They're making a scene. Course they were. She stood, straightening her blazer, and walked to the lobby. The moment she stepped out, she saw them. Linda clutching tissues, tears rolling theatrically down her face, and Mark standing beside her. His expression hard and bitter. The employees whispered, some already recording. My baby, Linda wailed. You won't even speak to your own mother. Abigail stopped in her tracks, face unreadable. Leave now, she said quietly. Mark sneered. You've turned into one of those people, huh? The kind who forgets where they came from. Abigail didn't blink. I remember exactly where I came from. That's why I left. Linda dropped to her knees dramatically, clutching her chest. I gave birth to you. I raised you. You treat us like nothing. Abigail's voice was sharp as glass. Because you are nothing to me. The crowd gasped. Mark's face turned red with fury. You think your money makes you better than us, he shouted. No, Abigail said coldly. It just made me free. Security appeared at her signal. Escort them out, Abigail ordered. Linda's sobs turned to whispers. You can't erase us, sweetheart. You'll always be our daughter. Abigail's face didn't move. Not anymore. As the guards led them out, Mark spat. You'll regret this. The glass doors closed behind them, sealing the chaos outside. Abigail stood still, her hands trembling only slightly before she steadied herself. Around her, whispers rippled through the office. Some pitied her, others judged. But she didn't care. She had survived worse. What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that this was only the beginning. The following morning, Jenny entered Abigail's office holding a thick envelope. This came by courier, she said cautiously. Abigail glanced at the sender. Holloway and Finch Law Firm. Her stomach tightened. Slowly she tore it open. Her parents were filing a legal claim against her under filial responsibility laws, an attempt to force her to support them financially. Abigail laughed bitterly. Unbelievable, she murmured. Jenny hesitated. Can they really do that? Abigail shook her head, staring at the paper. They can try. Her voice hardened. But they're about to learn who they're dealing with. Moments later, Abigail was pacing her lawyer David's office, fury in every word. "They abandoned me as a child, and now they want money," she snapped. David adjusted his glasses, calm and steady. "Technically, some states allow cases like this, but Texas doesn't have strict enforcement. Still, they could make your life miserable through publicity." Abigail exhaled sharply. "They already have. They're hoping I'll pay just to make them stop." David nodded. "That's likely. But if this goes public, we'll need a strategy, fast." Abigail crossed her arms, eyes blazing. "Then let's make it public, on my terms." That evening she sat at her desk, staring at her phone. A new message from her mother flashed on the screen. "Abigail, we wouldn't have to do this if you just helped us." Abigail typed back without hesitation. "Help. You left me at a train station." A minute later came the reply. "That was a long time ago. Families fight. Parents make mistakes." Abigail clenched her jaw. "You didn't make a mistake. You made a choice." The next line from her mother chilled her. "If you fight us, we'll take this all the way to court. Do you really want that embarrassment?" Abigail smiled coldly. "Try me." She hit send and blocked the number. The next few days were chaos. Abigail focused on her work, but rumors were spreading fast. She tried to ignore the whispers in the office, the curious glances, the tension in meetings. Late one afternoon, Jenny returned, pale. "You might want to check your email," she said quietly. Abigail opened her inbox. The subject line froze her blood. "Concerning allegations against you." It was from a major investor. The email contained screenshots of anonymous messages accusing her of stealing money from her parents and building her company through deceit. Every word was a lie, but a dangerous one. Abigail scrolled through the email, fury rising. Attached were fake accounts, fake emails, fake claims. Someone had gone to great lengths to ruin her. Jenny's voice trembled. Who would do something like this? Abigail didn't answer. She didn't have to. "It's them," she said finally. "My parents." Jenny's eyes widened. "Are you sure?" Abigail nodded. "Completely." She called one of her partners, demanding answers. After a long pause, he spoke carefully. "Some of the accounts were traced back to an IP address linked to your parents' home." Abigail closed her eyes and whispered, "Then they've declared war." That night, Abigail called an emergency meeting with her PR team. They sat around the conference table, faces tense, waiting for direction. "Our advice," one of them began, "is not to engage publicly. Stay quiet, let this fade." Abigail looked up slowly. "No," she said. "Silence is what got me here. I'm done being quiet." She opened her laptop and started typing her own statement. "For years, I suffered under manipulative parents. When I walked away, it was for survival. Now, after 20 years, they're trying to destroy what I built. I will not let them." She hit post before anyone could stop her. The next morning, Abigail's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Messages flooded in from colleagues, friends, strangers, some offering support, others just shocked. But one message stood out. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life." It was from her father. She stared at the screen, unshaken, and typed back, "If you continue, I'll take legal action. This is your last warning." No reply came. Still, Abigail knew silence from them was never peace. It was preparation. They had lost control of her once, and they wouldn't stop until they tried to take it back. But she wasn't the same frightened girl anymore. She was ready. A few days later, the inevitable arrived. A court summons. Jenny placed it gently on Abigail's desk. "I'm sorry," she said softly. Abigail opened it, scanning the bold print at the top. Mark and Linda Holloway versus Abigail Holloway, neglecting filial responsibilities. A sharp, humorless laugh escaped her lips. "They're actually suing me," she whispered. Jenny bit her lip. "What will you do?" Abigail stood, her expression hard as stone. "What I always do, fight back." She called David immediately. "Tell me how bad it is." His calm voice came through the line. They have no real case, but a lot of noise. Let's make sure we control the story. That night, Abigail wrote her truth, every brutal detail. She told the world about the night her parents abandoned her at 16, about the lessons that were really punishments, and about the years she spent rebuilding her life alone. She ended her post with one line: "Walking away wasn't cruelty, it was survival." By morning, the internet had exploded. People were furious, not at her but at her parents. Comments poured in. What kind of parents do that? This woman is brave. She owes them nothing. The tide had turned. For the first time, Abigail didn't have to defend herself. The truth did it for her. 3 days later, Vivian called. Her voice was shaky. "They lost everything, Abigail. The house, the money, it's all gone." Abigail sat in silence, staring at the skyline. "That's on them," she said quietly. Vivian's voice broke. "They're saying it's your fault." Abigail sighed. "It's always my fault, isn't it?" There was a pause. Then, for the first time, Vivian whispered, "Maybe they were wrong." Abigail closed her eyes, exhaustion washing over her. "Maybe," she said softly. "Viv, they destroyed themselves." For once, her sister didn't argue. When the call ended, Abigail sat alone in the quiet office, the city lights flickering like the ghosts of her past finally fading. A week later, Abigail drove past her childhood home. The paint had peeled, the yard was overgrown, and a large for sale sign leaned against the fence. She sat there for a while, her hands gripping the steering wheel. This was the house where she'd learned fear, silence, and survival. She expected anger or satisfaction, but all she felt was release. The ghosts were still there, but they no longer had power. She whispered to herself, "You can't haunt me anymore," before driving away. The past was behind her now, for good. Back in Austin, the storm slowly settled. The lawsuit collapsed, her name was cleared, and clients who had doubted her returned, impressed by her honesty. The news stories shifted in her favor. Headlines that once accused her now praised her courage. Woman fights back against toxic family lies. CEO stands tall against emotional abuse. For the first time in years, Abigail felt peace creeping in. Not the fragile kind built on fear, but the strong, quiet kind that came from truth. Still, she knew her parents wouldn't stay silent forever. Manipulators rarely disappeared. They regrouped. One evening, she sat on her balcony, sipping a glass of wine while watching the city lights flicker below. The world felt wide and safe again. Then came a soft knock at her door. She didn't need to check the peephole, she already knew. Opening it, she found Vivian standing there, her face pale and eyes swollen. "Abigail," she whispered. "Please, they have nowhere to go." Abigail's expression hardened. "Vivian, we've done this before." "They're still our parents," Vivian pleaded. "Dad's drinking again and Mom, she's not well. They just need one more chance." Abigail felt her heart twist, but her voice stayed steady. They had 20 years of chances. Tears filled Vivian's eyes. "How can you be so cold?" she cried. Abigail looked at her sister quietly. "Cold? Or free?" Vivian shook her head. "You don't mean that." Abigail stepped closer, her tone calm but final. "I do. I spent my entire childhood earning their approval, apologizing for existing. I won't do it again." Vivian's lips quivered. "I just don't want to lose my sister over this." Abigail's voice softened for a moment. "You didn't lose me, Viv. They did." Silence stretched between them, painful, real, necessary. Finally, Abigail opened the door wider, not to let her sister in, but to let the truth breathe. "Take care of yourself," she said. And she closed the door. An hour later, Abigail returned to her balcony. The evening breeze brushed against her skin, carrying the hum of the city. She leaned back, exhaling deeply. For years, her parents' voices had echoed in her head. Accusations, guilt, shame, but tonight it was quiet. The silence wasn't empty. It was healing. She picked up her phone and scrolled through her contacts until she found Aunt Marigold's name, the one person who had never left her. Abigail typed, "Dinner this weekend, my treat." The reply came almost instantly. "Finally. Mexican or Italian?" Abigail smiled. "Mexican. Extra margaritas." She set the phone down and let her thoughts wander back to the 16-year-old girl who had stood at that train station all alone, holding 2 bottles and a broken heart. That girl had believed she was disposable. But she wasn't. She had become a woman who built something unshakable from nothing. She whispered to herself, "You made it." A knock of wind swept through the balcony, and for a fleeting second, it felt like a blessing, a silent acknowledgement from the universe that she had passed the test her parents once thought would break her. Days turned into weeks. The lawsuit faded, the online chaos died, and Abigail's company thrived stronger than before. Her team admired her resilience, not just as a leader, but as a survivor who refused to be defined by pain. During one meeting, Jenny smiled shyly. "You've taught us something important," she said. "Boundaries don't make you cruel, they make you whole." Abigail smiled faintly. "That's the lesson I learned the hard way." It wasn't victory she felt, it was peace. Not loud or triumphant, but quiet and absolute, like the calm after years of storms. One night, as the city slept, Abigail sat writing in her journal. Her pen moved slowly, the words simple but true. Family isn't about blood. It's about who stands by you when no one else does. She paused, letting the ink dry. Sometimes the people who should love us the most are the ones who hurt us the deepest. Her next words came easily. "Walking away doesn't make you ungrateful, it makes you strong." When she closed the journal, tears shimmered in her eyes. Not from sadness, but from release. She finally understood what freedom truly meant. The next morning, sunlight filled her apartment, golden and soft. Abigail stood by the window, coffee in hand, watching people on the street below. Somewhere in the distance, a train horn echoed. It no longer made her flinch. It reminded her of where she had started, and how far she had come. Her parents' numbers still sat in her phone, untouched. Slowly, deliberately, she pressed block on each one. No more guilt. No more apologies. No more control. The girl who once waited for them to return was gone. The woman who replaced her had no reason to look back. Before we end her story, Abigail wanted to leave a message for anyone listening. "For years, I carried the weight of a past I didn't choose. I let guilt and obligation shape my life. But walking away isn't betrayal, it's survival. You don't owe anyone your peace just because they share your blood. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is choose yourself." She closed her journal, smiled faintly and whispered, "I'm free." Outside, the world moved on, bright, alive and full of new beginnings. For the first time in her life, Abigail wasn't running from her story. She was living beyond it.